And today we got to play
Oranienburger Kanal or something like that.
It's something like that. So this is a game based on. It's almost kind of like a train game because you are building, but
You're building different paths and tracks and roads. And
yeah, but
waterways.
it's a tableau builder, really.
It's
really a tableau builder, but then you're building roads and stuff around each of the cards to trigger certain effects. But before we get into it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell because board games are amazing, and that's what we do here at Legends of Nirvana. Now, Randy, can you tell us a little bit more about this game?
I can. So this was released on GameFound, and it has a couple expansions that were released as part of the package deal. It's a 2023 release. 1 to 2 player game, which, it's kind of unique that you get a 2-player game, but UA has been releasing some of those lately.
Well, I mean, I think because there was definitely a need in the market for them, because I think about how many nights me and you were trying to figure out what to play because the choices were so limited.
Yeah. So, I'm not a big fan of the 2-player or 1 to 2 player games because typically I feel like they're dumbed down from the full version, and I would rather play a meaty one. We'll talk about that here in a little bit, whether this one meets that criteria. 1 to 2 players, 45 to 90 minutes, age 12 and up. Again, designed by Uwe Rosenberg. Art is by Harald Liesk. We've seen his name come up lately a lot. Published by Spielworks. It's a city building and territory building game. And it says also economic in the sense that it has money, yes, but it's really not a...
Well, I mean, there's some resource management, but economic, I wouldn't consider this economic.
When it was on GameFound, it was 74 euros, which is roughly $79.50. It's currently not available anywhere in any stores online. Board Game Geek, there's somebody selling it new for $95, which isn't too bad. Or you could go to eBay and find somebody selling it for $150. I wouldn't do that. That's scalping. Board Game Geek gives this currently a rating of 8.1 and a rank of 2733.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about the quality of components. Now, there are a lot of wooden bits that are in a shape of a thing. Of different things. They make sense, right? So you've got wood here, and then you've got...
Ore, I believe, is what it's supposed to be. It looks like coal, but I think it's
this
ore.
Is iron, brick, and then your dirt. And then you've got bridges. Then you do have a lot of cardboard chits for the different types of roads, as well as the deck of cards. Now, the deck of cards do have a linen finish. Mm-hmm. They're pretty good thickness. I think that turned out. You also have these. They're also wood to help.
Yeah, they're very reminiscent of what comes in Le Havre as far as the discs. Or Agricola, although I think Agricolas are thinner, but they're very chunky.
Yeah. So overall, there's nothing really that... Oh, and I forgot we mentioned each of the players have one of these.
Yeah, they're kind of a rotary dial that's used for basically upgrading your pieces. It costs 1 of each of the basic goods to create 1 of each of the upgraded goods. So it's kind of a neat system.
So, and we'll talk more about that in gameplay. So, overall, there's not... I'm giving it a 6.
Yeah, it's nothing outstanding. I think a 6 is a fair score. Particularly these... I wish these were wooden. They're cardboard, all these paths and roadways and...
Yeah, I mean, it works.
They work fine, but there's nothing outstanding.
No. All right, so let's move on to the theme. So the theme is you're placing cards in a tableau and you're building modes of transportation around the cards.
Various buildings that I presume are at least in some way tied into this Oranienburger Canal, which I am sure I'm mispronouncing.
I have no idea what the theme is for this.
Yeah, it's a city building game. I mean...
Well, okay.
Yeah, it's just we're not familiar with that city, so I can't say if it's good, bad, or indifferent. There's no pictures on the cards that would identify the buildings. They're just simply resources. Iconography and scoring and costs on the cards.
And there's not a lot of artwork on this at all. Mm-hmm. You got the iconography, you got the back of these cards, but it's the same picture, just in slightly different hues. There's not a lot.
Yeah, it's
here for theme. I'm gonna have to give this a 5 on theme. There's just nothing. I even go a little bit lower because you're saying about Catan, but Catan is pretty generic too.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think a 5's fair. I'll give it a 5.5 just because I think it's pretty colors, and it did take some effort to make the city, the industrial artwork, but it's very redundant. It's repeated a lot, and it is nice work. The art on it.
Yeah, I mean, there's just not a lot of it.
It's just the same thing over and over again, and the iconography is pretty intuitive. Although we did have to look up a lot, even with the iconography. Once you get the hang of it, you can generally make out what it means.
Sometimes, not always.
But there's just a lot of it.
All right, so let's move on to the actual rule book. What did you think of it?
Okay, well, it's a series of rule books, or at least rule contents. You have one primary rule book, which is 16 pages in length, and it's, again, very yellow. There's a lot of yellow in this box.
Yellow.
Very, very yellow. So
hopefully you'll like yellow.
Yeah, being not a fan of yellow, it's kind of a turn off. The box is very generically yellow.
It's yellow with the highlighted blue.
Yes, blue with some white bordering. The components list doesn't picture the components. It's just a list of everything in it.
That.
I do. I want pictures. Give me pictures. The good news is it's pretty easy to tell what is what with this game because there's just not a lot of components, and they're pretty clear. If you see something that looks like it has railroad tracks on it, probably a railroad. It's pretty clear. The bridges are kind of nice with the little, the wooden bridges. That's the only thing that's kind of a custom, unique piece. The cart, we didn't play with the money or the tokens for victory points because we have the nice upgraded tokens, but they're pictured here to tell you who those are. Now, the setup is very well done. They've got the pictures there. This is where they did do the pictures. Told you they have everything lettered and telling you, where everything goes to set the game up. Once you get it down once, you'll never need to look at this again for that. And it does print on the board how many cards you need for each, depending on players 1 or 2. It's very simple to figure out. Now, the other thing is the rule book has, how to play 2-player, how to play 1-player. You have a glossary, A and B, that have all the cards from each set, because this comes with 2 decks of cards already in the base set, and you don't play with all the cards. You play with less than half of each set. There's 3 decks, A, B. Within the A's, there's a green, an orangish, and a blue, and you'll play with less than half of each of those because those kind of mark the phases in the game. And then there's a whole other deck of B. And then if you did the game found, you get 2 more decks. So I like the versatility of this, which we'll talk more about in the gameplay. But the rule books for A and B, or the glossaries for A and B, are already included. The only problem is when I look at this, I see it's going to be a problem if they're probably going to have a fold over or something in here. We haven't opened these to look at what C and D have, but there's no way it's fitting a full glossary in there. They also have cheat sheet cards. These are very useful during the game. They talk about how to play the game in English and German on the 2 sides. They've got basically everything you can do on your turns and all the scoring at the end of the game. It's all on there. Now, the only thing that's missing from here is the iconography. That's where these glossaries come in. Those are very handy. You can figure out pretty much anything you need from those books. I think they've done a good job with this. I like the fact that they've given the glossaries. I think my only concern is when we get into these other ones that we could see that they're not as nice. But I'm going to go ahead and give this an 8. I think it's done a good job. I wish they would have put the pictures when they were doing the listing of all the contents. There's just a lot of iconography. I don't think there's a better way they could have done it, but it is going to be a lot of referencing those glossaries when you play.
Yeah. So let's move on to gameplay. So the gameplay starts that you'll have coins on the 4 actions that are above. And then as first player, you're going to take your thing and you're going to pick one of these actions. Now, what are those actions? So buying a card is an action, which you immediately have to pay the cost, which is at the top of the card, and then you lay it on your tableau. It does not have to be touching any adjacent cards. So you could place one here, then you could take another one and place it here. and it's fine and
but separate
dandy.
actions. You only get 1 card per action.
Correct, and there's only 2 per round, so it gets pretty tight. The key thing there is, though, if they are close together, it's a lot easier to finish off roads. So
and to trigger scoring.
Train them. And that's one thing is, and we'll talk about when we get to the roads. So that's building a card and then playing a road or a path. Now, each road, path, waterway, and train track have different costs associated with them, and those are on the cheat sheet. So that's super helpful. So if it has one of those symbols there, then you take those actions. And then you take them and you place them around a card. Now, again, the train does have to touch a train and a water has to touch a water. But the road and paths are interchangeable. It doesn't matter if they're connecting to one or not. So just being aware of that. When you have all 4 corners or all 4 of a card surrounded, then you get to trigger its ability. And so based on the conditions, so for example, this one, for the number of waterways in an area, you get this certain thing. The key thing to note there is I can actually eventually end up triggering this card again, not just upon completion, by being able to place a bridge. Now, a bridge is an additional action. It does have a cost to it when you go to play it. And then you're going to connect it to that. Now, the card to be triggered again has to have 2 different bridges. So once that second bridge is in play, then you get to trigger it. But you only, so if you, you cannot attempt to trigger 2 cards doing the second bridge on 2 cards. So just kind of keep that aware. You're going to have to pick up one.
Yeah, so if you have 2 that already have 1 bridge and you connect them, you only get to choose one of them.
Yeah. Now, the other last piece of it is getting resources. Now, these are pretty clear. 4 wood, 3 of any resource of your choice that you can mix and match, and then 4 of the dirt. Okay, so it's you just add it to your rondel. So we'll say if I went here, for example, I put in any choice. So I would take a clay, a wood. I'll take a clay or a ore again. Now, the thing to keep in mind is once everyone takes their different turns and you end up with only 1 and that gets placed, that triggers the end of the round. You do get to choose to upgrade these resources. That's the only way for you to get those specialty, or the specialty resources, if you will. You get to move it 1 for free, or you can choose to pay 2 money to have it move up a second time if it is clear.
Well, you do that during the regular turn.
The 2.
You have free actions of either upgrading your base resources from the standard resources to the upgraded ones for the cost of 2 coin, or you can upgrade a standard resource to the next count, so you can move from a 0 to a 1 by paying whatever you're moving to the cost in a coin. So you could move from a 0 to a 1 by paying 1 coin, or a 1 to a 2 by paying 2 coin, and so on.
Correct. So just being aware of that, but coins are very, very hard to get.
And they count as victory points at the end.
Yeah, so do that for as you will. And that's essentially the actions of the game. The rest of it really depends on your cards, and that's where the strategy comes into play, is building your tableau, building your fences as appropriately. Now, on the cheat sheet, it does go over the things that end up scoring points at the end of the game. So that was actually really super helpful. Specifically, all of the pathways that weren't actually passed. So your roads, your waterway, and your tracks are all worth victory points on top of the victory points on the card, and victory point tokens that you've collected for being able to trigger some of your cards.
And money, and then your resources that are the upgraded ones are worth victory points. Your other ones, your standard resources, whatever the lowest value you have, that will be the value you get for your resources. So if you had 2 at 5 and 1 at 0, you're only going to get 0.
Yeah. I do want to say the most interesting thing about this game is the resource management piece. And I thought that that was really unique, is that you can't really upgrade the other resources without moving them, but they eat up your resources when you do. So it's being very careful about managing that. You almost always want to make sure that last spot's cleared so you can gain one. But these high-level resources go really, really quickly, specifically the clay. I felt like I ended up with plenty of iron. And, that one I had plenty of, but that clay was really hard to come by.
Yeah, what's interesting in this is there's only 7 action spaces, and you got 5 actions being taken every turn. So there's going to be very tight actions. You have 2 to let you get cards. One that is a better one that gives you the option to get the path or the roadway along with it, and the other one you just get a card. But as the game progresses, you'll empty decks, and that will add additional actions you can take with the spaces. And I thought that was a clever design.
Yeah.
We saw that in, what was it, Tiwa, where the different actions changed during the course of the game. That was a neat combination. I think that's kind of what they carried over a bit for this. I've heard some comparatives from what I've seen on Board Game Geek to this with Ora et Labora and with Glass Road, which we've not played either of those UA ones. So I'm looking forward to giving those a try. There's a lot of things going on, but this being a very tight game, you're going to have trouble getting what you want because there's only 7 actions. You want this, but you need this other thing before you get that, because there's one space is the only space where you can actually build railroads and waterways.
Yeah, that one was...
and you totally dominated it the last game.
Well, I did, and I would have dominated earlier if I had known how tricksy that one is.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you are trying to go for a strategy of building waterways and railroads, you're going to be very limited because there's only one space that lets you do that.
Yeah, but the thing to understand is though your cards may not necessarily, because most of your cards had to do with...
because you were dominating that, I had to focus on taking cards that gave me roadways.
I took the cards that were focused on those 2 things, and so it ended up. Now I ended up winning, but that was part of the game. Overall, like I said, I think the resource management was pretty interesting. I do like because we only got to play with knowing that there's 4 other decks to play with was really nice. 3 other decks to play with it. I'm probably going to give this an 8. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty decent. What about you? What are your
I will say, as far as 2-player games go, this is by far the best one I've played.
Oh, really?
I am not, as mentioned, I'm not a huge fan of 2-player games, but this one feels meaty. I like Targi. Targi was pretty good, but it still felt light. I liked Red Cathedral. It's not really necessarily a 2-player game, but it plays well.
I like Red Cathedral.
But even it was not as heavy as a standard Euro game that we like to play. Now, there are a lot of Euros of UAs in particular, like Agricola we play a lot. Le Havre, I think, converts to 2-player just fine. They made 2-player versions of them, but I don't like them, the 2-player versions. I'd rather play the standard game 2-player. This one, however, I think is designed well for a 2-player game, and it still feels meaty. I'm going to go ahead and give this one, in the category it's in, probably a 9.
Oh, wow.
I think he's done an outstanding job designing this game. It's very tight. There's a lot of variety, a lot of ways to score in this game, and I like that. The design of this, it feels very well made. And I'm looking forward to trying all the decks.
Okay. Well, guys, we had an absolute blast, and hopefully you'll come hang out with us again. We'll catch you guys later.
Bye.